Hi, Margaret Maloney, and together we're going to talk about how to conduct a lessons learned session. Because we all know it's a best practice to capture lessons learned and to make use of those lessons as we move forward. We certainly do not want to repeat the same mistakes over and over again, and when something works really well, we do want to do that again. And we want other project teams to avoid repeating mistakes and to leverage approaches that worked well, and of course we want them to share their lessons learned too. I want to share with you a simple approach. I learned it from a group of consultants who came on site when I worked for a company where project management was new. And I have been using this approach ever since because it's just simple and efficient. Of course, we start by inviting people to a lessons learned meeting. And we let them know that the purpose of the meeting is to come up with some things that we should do again and some things that maybe we do differently. So we let people know ahead of time. If for some reason you think someone will be uncomfortable with you as the project manager facilitating the meeting, then have someone else facilitate it. I haven't had that happen yet, but it's just something I want to put out there for you. Okay, if this is an in-person meeting, then have a whiteboard or easels with paper to write on. And if you are doing this online in a virtual meeting, then have some kind of, I'll say, whiteboarding tool, all right? Now what you're going to do is, so you've got everybody assembled and you've got your whiteboard and easels and pens or your virtual whiteboarding and ability to write on it. You're going to start by asking people, what is something you think we could have done differently? Now, the first time I did this on my own, I was worried about this. And I was worried about starting with, like, what should we do better? What should we do differently? Because when we say do differently, what we're saying nicely, instead of saying, like, what went wrong, which puts everyone on the defensive, we say, what could we do differently? I was afraid to start with this because I thought, well, maybe people would think, don't start off, this is too negative. And the team just stepped in and they said, no, let's go with that. Let's start with what we could do differently and let's finish on the positives. And I've done it that way ever since my team taught me that that's what they wanted. All right? Okay, so you do want to have some ground rules. For example, we don't name names. We don't make the lessons personal. If, for example, there was a challenge, let's say because I took time off during the project, then we don't say Margaret shouldn't have been allowed to take time off or Margaret shouldn't use vacation time during the project. But what we might say is we need a better understanding of allowable time off during peak project performance times, or we might say something like we need to have better cross training so that when people do use their allocated time, it doesn't delay the project. That's how we want to state something like that. Then what you can do is you go around the room. I think of it as going around the table if you've got people, in person, maybe sitting in a conference room with you, or if it's a virtual meeting, people are virtually sitting around. You ask everybody to contribute. Everyone also has the opportunity to say pass. All right. I had one team member who, super wonderful person to work with. I don't know what happened to him, but I believe through the course of his career, he became hesitant to express any opinions out loud in public. It's very unfortunate. But he would never let it be said that he didn't show up where he was supposed to be. So he was there at the meetings, but he wouldn't say anything. So he would always pass. That's okay. Sometimes people pass because when you have a good-sized group, the idea you wanted to share was already said by somebody, two people, sitting 2 people away from you, okay? Typically about 3 passes around the room or around the group is enough, because after we go around 3 times, most people are saying pass because the ideas have gotten out there. If after the 3rd time there are people who still have new information to contribute, well, then we're going to let them. So use that 3 as a guideline. So now, you've gone around the room, people have shared what we could do differently, and by the way, while they're sharing this, you're recording this information, as in writing it. I don't mean like filming or audio, I mean writing it down, so it's on the whiteboard, virtual or otherwise. But here's what you're not doing. You're not keeping track of who said what. You don't write down, Margaret said this. People may or may not remember, but we don't want to attach names to any of the ideas because people will lose their anonymity and they may not feel comfortable sharing in future lessons learned sessions, right? Okay, so you've got this big list of ideas, and you've got this group of people. Now, everyone gets 3 votes to spend. And what we ask people to do is to take some time and look at all the ideas and then place their votes on the ideas they think are the most significant. They can spend their votes any way they want. They can put 3 votes on one item if they think that's really important. They can put 1 vote on 3 items. It's up to them. It's up to them. And then what you wind up with is you usually wind up with a clear picture of what are the 3 ideas, the 3 things we think we should do differently next time. Now, once you've completed that, guess what? Go ahead and use the same approach with what went well. What would we do the same next time? What do we want to make sure we recreate? And so we use the same approach, going around the room, people expressing ideas, allowing people to say pass if they need to, making sure the ideas are jotted down, no names attached to the ideas, allowing people to have their 3 votes to spend, and then there you go. Now the meeting's over. What do? Gather up the information. You're going to put it in a document, unless you have a lessons learned database, which would be wonderful. So gather it up, explain the process. So, you can write like a very brief document with a brief introduction. These are the lessons learned sessions that was gathered from Project X. Discuss the process. Here's the approach we used, what we did, how we did it. Here are the top 3 for each area, things we would do differently, things we would do the same. And in a document, I think it's a good idea to also list what we would do differently first and then what we would do the same second. Leave them on that high note. And consider, something I like to do is in the appendix of the document, I like to include all of the items. So if somebody says, that's great, these are the top 3, I want to know everything that was said, good, please go to Appendix A. And that is how we can do it. And then publish it and make sure it gets out there. And of course, my wish for you is that you work someplace where we can publish this kind of information, right? Simple, easy, off you go, gathering lessons learned. Thanks, and bye for now.